So Henry is the Pennsylvania Program Director for Solar United Neighbors, which is a new model, a new way to look at how to make solar energy more accessible and affordable to regular people. Previously, Henry held positions at the Institute for Sustainable Communities and the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, where he helped local leaders make their communities more sustainable, resilient, and equitable. Henry is an Eco-Districts accredited professional, and he holds a master's in public administration from Cornell University and a bachelor's in politics from Oberlin College, and Henry lives in Pittsburgh.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Henry McKay, and I'm from a nonprofit organization called Solar United Neighbors. We are what we do is we help people go solar. We try to make it easier to go solar and often cheaper to go solar. We help people join together, and then we help people fight for their energy rights. We see ourselves as a community of people who are trying to change their energy system, build a newer, cleaner, fairer energy system, with rooftop solar technology really as the cornerstone technology that all of this is built around. Just to give you a sense of what we do, looks like some of that is cut off at the top. So we've been around for about a decade. We've helped over 3,300 people go solar through our programs, and that's led to the installation of 25.7 megawatts of solar energy. Just to give you a sense of what 25.7 megawatts of solar energy looks like, a typical home is going to install somewhere between 2 and 12 kilowatts, and a megawatt is 1,000 kilowatts. This has led to over $63 million being invested in local solar economies. Almost 800 jobs created because of these solar programs. And then we also do a lot of work to mobilize and inform and educate a network of solar supporters who can try to improve the energy system in the place where they live after they go solar with us. We're fans of distributed solar technology for a lot of reasons, and a lot of them are obvious. The air quality, water quality, environmental benefits that come from solar technology. But one thing that we think is truly transformative about solar technology is that it can help create, the words written at the top here that you can't read, something called energy democracy. So here on the left side of the slide is the kind of traditional energy system. You have the sources of energy really need to be generated in large power plants, and these power plants don't make good neighbors, so you're typically far away from where people live, and they're really capital intensive and expensive and complicated, so only really large companies with a lot of investors can own them and control them. And that means that you have this energy system that's dominated by monopolies or near monopoly companies who control where energy is generated, how it's generated, and they have a lot of control over what they charge you for it. And you're just a customer. You got to basically accept that price. And then we have this complicated transmission network to get this energy over long distances to the places where it's actually used. But distributed solar technology, rooftop solar technology really flips that on its head. So a solar panel is a power plant you can put on your roof and not experience any ill effects from it. You can so you're using it directly on site, and it's affordable enough that a lot of people can just own it for themselves. So you own your own power plant, and you've transformed yourself from just a consumer of energy to also a producer of energy. And you get not only those economic benefits that come with being a producer, you're saving money. This is an investment that you see a return on over time, but you also get more control over your energy system. You're deciding where your electricity comes from, how it's generated. And solar is what enables this transformation. And then, of course, solar has a lot of financial benefits, rooftop solar. So there was a study done by the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center, and they found that in 46 of America's largest cities, a fully financed, typically sized solar PV system is a better investment than the stock market. And in 42 of these cities, the same system already costs less than energy from a residential customer's local utility. So if you spread out the cost of buying that solar system over the life of the system, that's cheaper electricity than you're likely getting from the utility. And this is true for most people in the country. Yep. So solar savings it's essentially avoided energy cost. It's electricity you don't have to buy anymore because you're generating it on your own. And we've actually seen a lot of uptake in Amish and Mennonite communities with solar technology. And one of the reasons for that is because they tend to be off grid. And what electricity they are using is coming from a diesel generator. So, and then if you kind of take the cost of the electricity from the diesel generator, the fuel, the operations and maintenance, replacing the generator when it gets old, the cost of the generator itself, they're paying 5 to 10 times what a grid-tied farm is paying for electricity. And so by going solar, they have potential for up to 50% savings even before any tax credits, just by switching to an off-grid solar system from a diesel generator. And these numbers, by the way, are from Stanley Minnick at Organic Valley, so like the yogurt guys. They have a lot of they're a big producers cooperative, and they have members around the country and a lot in Pennsylvania. And a lot of their members in Pennsylvania are in Amish or Mennonite communities, and they do a lot of education for their members around renewable energy. So if you're interested in exploring that issue in particular, they have some guides out that are really useful. So we started, as I said, a decade ago back in Washington, D.C. in 2007. These two young men here, we have very grassroots origins. So these two young men were in high school. They started learning about climate change and solar energy, and they thought, well, why can't we take our home solar? So the guy on the left here, Walter, he asked his mom, Anya Schoolman, who eventually became our executive director and is currently my boss, well, let's take our house solar. She looked into it. This was 2007. It was much more expensive than it was today. It was confusing, the tax credits, the incentives, the technology itself. There wasn't any good consumer-facing guidance on how you do this and how you do it right. So what they did is they went around, they said, all right, we're going to take our whole neighborhood with us if we're going to do this. They knocked on a bunch of doors. They got 50 of their neighbors signed up in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, and they formed what was called the Mount Pleasant Solar Cooperative, a bunch of homeowners who wanted to go solar together. They shared information about the process, and then crucially, they got one contractor, one solar installer, to service everybody's house. And they were able to get savings on the solar installation. So they could go solar more cheaply, more easily, and make a bigger impact because they did it not just one house, it was 50 houses. So that was our first solar co-op. Eventually, an organization was created to run more of these co-ops across Washington, D.C., and then we spread into Maryland and Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, New Jersey, Florida, Minnesota, and now Pennsylvania is our newest program we just launched in January. So this solar co-op idea, it's essentially a bulk purchase campaign for residential and small business solar. It's a bunch of people going solar together. They're going solar through one contractor who's competitively selected, and so they're able to earn savings, get a better deal than what they might normally get going alone. They get a lot of support from our organization, Solar United Neighbors, throughout the process. So you are going into this as a very informed consumer. You're not just hearing about solar technology from the guy who's trying to make a sale. You have some kind of unbiased guidance through the process. And then these co-ops work closely with local partners in the area where they're being run, in the county or municipality where they're being run. Organizations who are on the ground who can help spread the word about it and get people to sign up. The solar co-op process takes about 8 to 10 months. Typically, it starts with a lot of free public info sessions about solar that I deliver in Pennsylvania, where we talk about the technology, we talk about the financing options, we talk about how you think about the savings, and we talk about how the solar co-op process works. People who are interested in going solar, they'll sign up, and it's always free to join. None of the participants ever pay us anything to be part of the co-op. They're only paying an installer should they eventually decide to go solar. Once the group gets large enough, usually 20 to 30 people, we'll start running a competitive bidding process. We'll put out a request for proposals, get all the installers we can in the area to bid on servicing this group, compete to offer this group their best deal, and then we don't just pick an installer. We want to remain installer neutral. We don't want to make it appear like we have some buddies over at the solar company who we're handing off a bunch of business to. So we convene what we call the selection committee, and we get a few volunteers from amongst the co-op participants, people who are going solar, to spend some time on a weekday evening, maybe around somebody's kitchen table, actually reviewing all the bids. We'll do some homework on them. We'll call their references, and we'll make sure the licensing is in order. but it's the co-op participants themselves who pick the installer that is going to service everyone. They pick the deal that they think is the best deal for this particular context. And then that deal is offered to everybody in the group. Anyone who joins at no cost gets access to this group rate, this group price for going solar. And then once everyone's solar installations are complete over the course of a few months, we have a party and we celebrate doing something really cool together. And that party isn't just a celebration. It's a way to connect people into this broader solar movement. You're now a very informed, educated advocate for solar energy, and you can use those skills and that knowledge to make it easier for others to go solar. So this is kind of the long game of the solar co-op. So we don't want to just help people go solar and then walk away. We want to help them become energy advocates, because they really have a physical and financial stake now in the clean energy economy. So these empowered, connected, clean energy advocates who are now also solar powered, they can have a lot of spillover effects on broader sustainability initiatives in the communities where they live, in the states where they live. You know, they will vigorously defend things like net metering, which is where you can sell your excess solar energy back to the utility and they pay you for it. They'll help smooth roadblocks and permitting and interconnection, so it's easier and quicker to get that solar system up and running. They'll maybe try to increase the state renewable energy goals or the state solar goals. They also tend to be really interested in broadening access to solar. So they'll be talking about how can we have more low-income participation in solar? What are new financing tools that can make that easier? And one thing that's particularly relevant for Pennsylvania right now, I'm going to go off script a little bit, is community solar. So community solar is solar for everybody else, everyone who can't just put it on their roof right now. Community solar is where you have an array over in one location and you can buy a share of that, maybe a few panels, maybe a few kilowatts, and then you get that electricity credited to your electric bill. You get those savings just like it was actually on top of your roof, but you don't need to worry about the condition of your roof. You need to worry about if you actually own your roof or if your roof is really well shaded. So it really is solar for anybody with an electric bill. There is supposed to be a bill that's going to be coming out in the state legislature, in the state house this fall. So this is something that's potentially on the horizon for us in Pennsylvania. And there's a lot of, I encourage you to try to learn more about this. We're going to be putting out more researches about it. There's a lot of interesting things that can happen beyond just more people going solar. You can use abandoned mine lands, for example, to site the solar installation. You can have farmers use part of their land to site the solar array. They get lease payments, so they get a reliable, regular source of revenue from this. And they can even do things like planting pollinator habitat amongst the solar panels. And so you create habitat for bees and other pollinators. And if there are pollinated crops right next to those solar panels, they might get a yield boost from all those pollinators you just attracted there. And then somebody will on those flowers amongst the solar panels, someone will make honey from it, and they'll sell it as solar honey. So you can go buy solar honey. And then someone else, this is what they're doing in Minnesota, someone else will turn that honey into beer, and they'll sell it as solar beer. Yeah, or solar mead, yeah. So other things these empowered, connected solar advocates can do is they can rack out the policy wins. So this is in Washington, D.C., where we've had the longest history of solar co-ops. And as we're taking more people solar, both in and out of our co-ops, there's policy win after policy win, expanding access to solar energy, increasing renewable energy goals, fixing their solar renewable energy credit market. Because these people show up to meetings and they know what they're talking about, and legislators tend to listen to them. And that's because a solar owner can be a more effective advocate than someone who's just kind of philosophically inclined to support renewable energy. So not only do they support clean energy, but they can talk from personal firsthand experience about their solar system. They can encourage others to go solar. I heard somewhere that the thing that makes you the most likely to go solar is if you know somebody else who went solar. They're knowledgeable about the complexities of the technology, but also about state policy that affects the energy system. They're financially invested in the future of the energy grid, which is great motivation to show up to those public hearings, to call your legislator. And then public utility commissions, who kind of regulate our energy system, they see solar owners as a unique class of ratepayer. They're not just people who are buying electricity from the utility. They're also affected directly by net metering. They can sell their excess energy back. And so they have a special standing in those rate cases from the PUC and other PUC proceedings. So our solar co-ops will take a number of people solar. Usually it's somewhere around 30% of the people who sign up to join the co-op will actually go solar at that time with that selected installer. But the remaining 70% of people some of them might not go solar at all. They just will decide it's not worth it. But many of them will go solar with another company or at a later date. And so there's a lot of spillover of broader growth in solar because we're out there talking about solar. People are seeing solar signs pop up in people's yards, and it really raises the profile. This is especially important in places like Western Pennsylvania, where you still hear a lot of people say solar doesn't work here. And it does. We have 18,000 solar arrays, solar installations in Pennsylvania. Allegheny County, which is just as cloudy as it is here, has something like 1,800 solar systems. By the way, Indiana County, last I checked, has 13 solar systems, so we can make a pretty big impact with something like a solar co-op. So this here is an example of Rockville, Maryland, where we've had a couple co-ops. The light blue line is number of solar permits, so the number of solar installations. And then we ran co-ops in 2015 and 2016. And the dark blue is the people who actually went solar through the co-op, but the light blue is the people who just went solar through some other way, because there was a lot of dialogue about solar in their community, and it was really raising the profile of it. And these solar co-ops have an economic impact that's bigger than what just individuals going solar can exert. So there's a formula we use, and I don't remember the name of it. I think it's from the Solar Foundation, where you can figure out for every megawatt of solar you install, how many jobs are created. And that for our solar co-ops, that means we've created close to 800 new jobs. And because these are large batches of people going solar who are fairly likely solar customers, that enables employers to justify hiring more people, retaining more people, because they see this long pipeline of projects coming from the solar co-op and coming from other people in that community. And we're doing these around the country, and now around Western Pennsylvania. We currently have 4 active co-ops in Western Pennsylvania. We have one over in Cambria County, the Allegheny County Solar Co-op, the Crawford-Mercer Solar Co-op, and then the Upper Ohio Valley Solar Co-op. So this is Washington and Greene counties down in far southwestern Pennsylvania, as well as parts of West Virginia and parts of Ohio. And what we're looking for now is, where's the next generation of our Pennsylvania co-ops going to be? I think there's a lot of reasons. One of them is this task force, this summit here, that Indiana County could be a great place to do this. Another reason is I'm not that far away in Pittsburgh, so I don't have to drive very far. And really what it takes to launch a co-op is finding the right partners, is organizations, universities, municipalities, other kinds of local governments, community organizations, small businesses, religious congregations, really anyone who has a relationship with people in the community who would want to help spread the word about this initiative and drive people to show up. So there we go. So that's my contact information. I'm going to stick around a little bit longer after this. If you're interested in learning more about our solar co-op model, or you are interested in getting involved in helping us create something like that here in Indiana County, or if you live somewhere else, come find me or shoot me an email. Do we have time for questions?
What have you found to be the normal payback time with these installations? It costs them extra to get involved?
Yeah, so generally it does vary a lot. The typical payback in Western Pennsylvania is 10 to 12 years, more if you have more expensive electricity, less if you have cheaper electricity. And the way you experience that payback depends on how you paid for the solar. So if you pay in cash, it's going to take you 10 to 12 years to essentially earn back that cash payment in that big upfront payment and your energy savings. But there's lots of different financing vehicles out there, lots of different types of loans to use for solar, and a lot of those will help you start to see net savings much earlier on in the process in the first couple years.
When you talked about forming a co-op initially, and you were talking about 30 homes, I had the impression that there might have been some interconnectedness between all the installations. But since you're representing it by counties, it sounds like you form a co-op where you could have people distributed all over the county, but
Exactly.
they're just cooperating in the business arrangement.
Right. Really, the only thing, so everyone would have their own private solar system that they own or finance or lease on their own private property. There's no sharing of energy. What you're sharing is that deal, that competitive bidding process, that deal from the installer and the resources from us.
And in some cases, it leads to a community solar project where some piece of land gets a larger solar installation, and some members of the co-op can own a proportional share.
No, and that's partly because that's not exactly how our co-ops work, but also because community solar is not legal in Pennsylvania, which is why there needs to be a bill to change state law to do it.
Okay. And do REAs have allow the solar net metering to the same extent as the regulated utilities?
That's a good question. So net metering, which is the system where where if you generate more than you use in a given month, you earn bill credits, for whatever extra you generated that you put back out into the grid, and then you can use those bill credits in a future month. And those bill credits are a 1-to-1, 1 kilowatt to 1 kilowatt ratio, so they're at the retail rate. If you generate 10 extra kilowatt hours in July, that's 10 free kilowatt hours you have in the future. So that's state law, but only the big investor-owned utilities like Penelec, West Penn, Duquesne have to follow that law. The rural electric co-ops, which is the question is about, they can kind of do their own thing. A lot of them will just adopt the same policy that the big utilities do, but some of them have a different policy where it's a lower reimbursement rate, so it's not as financially attractive. So yeah, and same with municipal utilities, so they kind of operate under different rules. Yes?
I have a two-part question.
Okay.
The first part is, what protection is there against hail, and can you install solar panels on aluminum roof, galvanized roof?
Yes, so solar panels are rated basically for the climate region they're in. So if you're in hurricane country, they needed to be able to take stronger winds. So North Carolina has very little damage on their solar systems, residential and utility scale, after the storm. They were not working because the grid went down, but once the grid gets back up, those solar panels are working and generating electricity again. And for hailstone impacts, also there are rules about they're covered in a shatter-resistant glass, and so they're supposed to be able to resist hailstone impacts of a certain size. I don't remember if it's a golf ball or a ping pong ball or a cheese puff or whatever the size is. Yeah. And yes, yeah, you can put them on different kinds of metal roofs. You said a galvanized aluminum roof. Yeah, so that might be a type that requires some kind of penetration, and so there's things they can do to seal the penetration against leaks. If you have standing seam metal, they can just clamp it to the standing seams on the roof there.
Several of your pictures looked like you were putting the panels over shingled roofs.
Mm-hmm.
So do the shingles ever need to be replaced after you put those panels on? And have you done condominiums before?
So most people are putting their panels on shingled roofs, and we advise that if your roof is older, I think the rule is 10 years, you should get it replaced before you go solar. A lot of solar installers have like a roofing guy or a roofing partner they work with, so you can kind of do that all in one go, because if you need to do roof work after you install the solar, you need to pay someone to take them off and put them back on. And what was the other question? Condos.
Have you done condos?
So I don't think any condos have participated in our solar co-ops. We've advised condos and solar projects before. It gets complicated because maybe the roof is collectively owned by the condo association, but everyone has their own utility bill, so you need to figure out how do you get the residents to see the savings from the solar that is collectively owned. But it certainly can be done. It just is a more complicated process.
Who maintains these things once they're installed? And using that North Carolina example of a moment ago, if the grid goes out, who's responsible for getting the thing back online?
So for a residential system, you'll have a variety of warranties from the manufacturer of the equipment and also from your installer. So that's what would cover the maintenance of them. Typically, you're going to expect very little maintenance over the life of the system, barring any natural disasters. The solar panels have no moving parts. They last a really long time without needing any work done on them. Some of the other components, like inverters, will often need to be replaced during the life of the system. And if you have a leased system, so this is like what Solar City did, where you don't own it, they put it on your house for free and you buy the electricity from the solar system, then part of that lease arrangement is they're the maintenance guys who fix whatever breaks. One more?
Last question.
Question about battery backup. Is that being used in residential settings? There are some, there's a really great battery Lexus is using for cars. Is that something that's being used within co-ops?
Yeah, so we give anyone the option to also install battery storage because most installers who do solar will also do batteries. So there's always a lot of interest in batteries. Batteries are getting cheaper, but they're still really expensive. So it kills a lot of the financial benefits from going solar. So we say really only do it if you really need that backup power, that stored backup power from solar. But I think we're close to them becoming much more affordable. Thank you all very much.